Welcome to the Film Board, the movie conversation podcast reviewing the latest releases that you've seen and want to talk about. My name is Ocean, and I'm the host of the Film Board podcast. On this episode, we will be talking about Spider-Man: No Way Home.
Ever since I got bit by that spider, I've only had 1 week where my life has felt normal. That was when you found out.
When you botched that spell where you wanted everyone to forget that Peter Parker's Spider-Man, we started getting some visitors. From every universe.
Hello, Peter. You're not Peter Parker.
I'm sorry, what was your name again?
Dr. Otto Octavius.
Wait, no, seriously, what's your actual name?
There are others out there. We need to send them back. So, Scooby-Doo this crap.
You know, all this is kind of your mess. I know a couple of magic words myself, starting with the word please.
Please, Scooby-Doo this crap.
You're flying out into the darkness to fight ghosts.
What do you mean?
They all die fighting Spider-Man. It's their fate. I'm sorry, kid.
Yeah, me too.
Today, I am chatting with Kyle Olson, the creator of the Swashbuckling Ladies Debate Society podcast, Matthew Fox, creator of the Ethical Panda family of podcasts, and currently the host of Marvel Movie Minute, and Rob Cabasco, a man who needs no additional credits, to get their thoughts today about this movie and to share them all with you. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Glad to be here.
There's no need in going in what we all know about Spider-Man, since we all know Spider-Man, we all love Spider-Man. If you don't know anything about Spider-Man, then you have about 8 other movies you need to watch before this one, and then come back. So instead of talking about that, just talk about what were your expectations going into this film, and did it meet them?
So I've been a Spider-Man fan for forever. I mean, he's one of my top 5, but I think that aside from Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, which I will sort of set to the side because it's brilliant, but it's sort of like it's a different set of muscles that they're stretching over there than what they're doing here. I think, from my opinion, the best live action Spider-Man ever was Spider-Man: Homecoming. Like, I think like they nailed everything that was like, and I think it's a distillation of what came before. Like they had to make some missteps and stuff along the way to get to that point. But I watched again too, anticipation of this, and I think Spider-Man: Homecoming is like the best Spider-Man that we've seen. I like the sequel a lot too, and so I was anticipating, but because this is the end of that trilogy, like, oh boy, like you really gotta, like, those part 3s are really hard to pull off, as we've seen, in recent major franchises not being able to do it. Matrix, Star Wars. It's really hard to do that. And like, are they going to be able to do this? And they actually did. I had really high expectations because there are a lot of people, a lot of actors, a chance for it to be really overstuffed. And I think they actually pull it off. I think they actually they've put together probably the best Spider-Man trilogy so far, and one of Marvel's best trilogies.
I had very much the same experience with very much the same experience as Kyle did, even though the expectations that made me worry were completely different. Because for me, I like Spider-Man. He's never been my favorite. I loved the Tobey Maguire movies when I watched them. I recently rewatched them to get ready for this and thought they were super cringy and really uncomfortable. And then came to like Andrew Garfield movies a lot more. And I've liked the Tom Holland character. I have been very nervous about the direction that a lot of the MCU has been going in terms of multiverse stuff, because, I very much disliked Loki. I very much disliked what they did with What If. And I was worried that this movie was going to be a whole lot of how many angels can dance on the pin of one multiverse or another. And I couldn't care less about those questions. And I had a lot of concerns about once you open the multiverse, death has no meaning and nothing has any meaning. I was so surprised by how much I loved this movie and how much I thought they, in part by just avoiding all the nonsense that Loki opened up, and which we don't have to get into, no spoilers, they managed to tell a very self-contained story, which I don't have any understanding of how Doctor Strange's spell works. I don't think it made any sense, but I don't care because everything else was so good. And as I'll get to, I think one of the things that I find most interesting is it's a movie about a character who I fundamentally disagree with. Like, and I'm going to have so much fun when we get to the ethics of it. I'd never stopped laughing. There were so many laugh out loud moments. And then I'd be laughing and get hit right in the gut by oh, I'm tearing up now. And it was just, everything I was afraid of about this movie didn't happen. And the one thing that I most wanted, which is if a superhero is having legal trouble in New York, Matt Murdock has to be the lawyer. It doesn't make sense if he's not. And it was Charlie Cox. So that's all I needed.
This movie on paper is a train wreck. It has too many characters. It has too much fan service. It has too many plot holes. It has a convoluted plot that makes no sense. And it is freaking glorious.
Yes.
I have never seen a movie that the more I've thought about it, the more my brain hurts, and I don't care because I cheered, I cried, I laughed, I loved it. It is a unicorn as far as I'm concerned. I have never seen a movie in my life where my expectations were that it's going to be everything, but can they do everything? How could they do everything? And they did everything, and it's insane. And there are some things that totally frustrate me about it. I don't care. It's just works. I don't know how they did it.
I mean, it's kind of funny, Kyle, you talked about how the Into the Spider-Verse, which I agree is just a phenomenal movie. This is a very different set of muscles, but in some way I feel like this had a very similar mentality of, first of all, it was playing with multiversal stuff in, I think, a very similar way of like, look, the multiverse is the MacGuffin. Don't ask too many questions. Just enjoy the fun ride. But also just the kind of fourth wall breakingness of it, the kind of meta-ness of it, and the kind of references to screw up things from the earlier movies.
Even going so far as to mention Tobey Maguire's bad back.
Right.
Like, I was like, yeah. Wow. They like really just like, it's like the more you dig in, the more weird trivia stuff they decided to throw in as well.
Or the fact that the writers of the Tobey Maguire totally did something new with the web shooters. And here they finally made that make sense. It felt like so much of the fan service stuff, it didn't feel like fan service. It felt like, yeah, it's possible that in a multiverse, there is one Spider-Man who does shoot webs in a different way, and everyone else would be confused about it. You know, like, they made it all make sense.
Yeah, and in a giant slam bang, overstuffed movie full of all these characters, the best things were not web slinging. They were not huge multiversal things. It was the three of them just sitting around comparing being Peter Parker. And the fact that John Watts and the writers stuff too actually let it breathe enough that to be like, this is what we want. You know, like I've long said that the best scene in Avengers Age of Ultron is them all trying to pick up the hammer, because it's the only time you get to see them just hanging out. And they left a couple, and they did it with the villains, they did it with the Spider-Man. Like, they just let them have those moments that we all are just leaning forward like, oh, I want to know every single thing you're about to say. Tell me more.
Well, especially because I think that's one of my biggest frustrations often with the MCU is MCU hates team-ups. Like, it does a lot of team-up movies, but like, you know, Avengers movie, they only get together to the end. And then the second Avengers movie, they break them up until they can all get back together. And then they break them up again.
Let them be Avengers for a while.
You know, I love Daredevil. I love that we got Matt Murdock here, but they kept feeling like Matt Murdock and Foggy can't be... Just let Matt Murdock and Foggy sit in an office and talk to each other. And you're right, they gave us that, but like also with the Spider-Man, but also just Norman. Yeah. I would pay money just to watch Norman and Osborn, like Norman and Otto just sitting and like chatting about criminal philosophy, you know?
So the movie opens with, basically Spider-Man is, I think it opens about 5 seconds after Far From Home ended. You're right, he's still on the billboard looking up and he sees Mysterio revealing that Spider-Man is Peter Parker to the world. And then for reasons that I still am not fully understanding, but I don't think about it. Everybody looks at not Mary Jane. Jane, MJ. And I honestly, I was calling her Mary Jane until this movie. So looks at MJ and says, "Are you Spider-Man's girlfriend?" And they have a little swinging scene to try to get away. Now everybody knows who that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. We have another couple days of him starting his senior year in high school, and then him realizing that and he and his friends not getting into MIT because MIT knows that he's Spider-Man and he knows that they're his friends, right? So from there, as Peter Parker makes the obvious logical leap of talking to Doctor Strange about, hey, could you just erase everybody's memories, right? And so Doctor Strange, for reasons that Doctor Strange hears his list of 4 people that are affected and thinks, yes, these 4 people being affected do in fact outweigh the memories of the entire globe. And that is kind of the to me the initial event that kind of kicks off where we are with everything. And so, yes, the scene ended in a very humorous way where Doctor Strange asked him if he actually talked to the admissions board about not getting into college, and he said no and threw him out of the house. Funny, yes.
Look, he's a Zoomer. Zoomers are going to do what Zoomers do.
Exactly.
Call someone onto the telephone?
World-changing spell? Pick up a phone. World-changing spell.
That's absolutely. And so then I think that's really kind of where I wanted to really pick up the conversation here about, with this Tom Holland's version of Spider-Man and this motivation, right? So does his motivation make any sense? And how do you feel about like what it means to then go this route, right? To think that for Spider-Man to go from, hey, there are 100 different ways I can solve this problem. Let me go to something globally cataclysmic first.
I know Matthew's going to have a lot to say about this, so that's why I'm going to try and jump in first. So, I mean, from the Peter perspective, I think it 100% is a Peter Parker thing to do. Like that he looked at this and like, it's my fault. I ruined everyone's life. It's because I was trusting or dumb or whatever, to go to Doctor Strange and say, hey, can you do it? Because I don't think he even knew exactly what he was asking. Like, can you do a thing? Was it rolling back? He originally wanted to roll back time. He actually wanted to time travel back and make it so it didn't happen. But he... doing this is a very selfless, kind of Peter Parker thing to do of like, it's not about me. Like, it's not about me. It's the fact that I wrecked their lives. I made things worse for them. Can we do things better for them? Now, when you get into Doctor Strange, it was sort of like, I don't know. It's weird. Doctor Strange is strange because, there you go. Because we've seen his origin and then sort of where it leaves off. And then there's a huge gap before we get to when he shows back up again, in, I think it was, Thor in Ragnarok, wasn't it? That's the next time we see him. There's a massive gap there, and he's a very different guy now. And it's like, I feel like we sort of missed all the really cool fundamental, like him becoming a good magician. Like we saw how he got his powers and then sort of his first fight, but nothing in between. So like at the time he's going up against and doing I've come to bargain, like he just has one trick, like and now he's like throwing spells around and all this stuff and crazy. Like, well, where'd all that come from? So I sort of don't understand who he is. Every time he shows up, I'm like, I don't really know who this is or what he's about or what's going on with him, what his motivations, what his plans are. So I don't know if this is just him showing off. Like, just like, yeah, I can do that. That'd be fun. Like, I've never done something like that before. Let's try it out. This is just the cocky surgeon coming out again of like, no one else could do this, but I can do it. And that's where it goes. I don't know.
He's a goof. He's no longer Sorcerer Supreme. And yes, that mantle, that crown has been removed. And now he's a goof. He's a goof that's willing to let the Sanctum Sanctorum be covered in snow and have lackeys shoveling it. He's a goof. Like, I actually think that's what the message is. And I will say, like, my whole thing about the convoluted plot, this is where I will get, again, the movie's glorious. I love it. Don't think I don't. The movie ends when Matt Murdock is in the room and is like, yeah, Peter, you're fine. You're never going to go to jail. End credits. Done. Movie's over. That's it. Happy? Yeah. Happy may go to jail. Oh, that's too bad. We don't care. Haha, Happy, you're screwed. That's it. Movie's over. Like that. I mean, they didn't get MIT. Who cares? There's 50 other schools they can get into. Whatever.
Well, not necessarily. If the reasons for not getting an MIT would be applicable to any other school.
And then you know what? They just figure out something else out. They go underground for a couple of years. They've already been through craziness. The bottom line is this, and this will lead into what I think Matthew is going to say. Here's the deal. Peter is is a fun-loving, innocent, beautiful young man who wants to please everyone. That's his own. He's a people pleaser. That's it. This movie is the story of the conclusion of that phase of his life, but that's what it is. He's a people pleaser.
So there's a couple things. One is, for me, the real motivations of Spider-Man that I want to talk about come later in terms of his motivations for what we do about the spell, in terms of the box and fixing everyone. That's where I really want to dive in. But in terms of this, I'll just say, and Rob, I think you said it perfectly because it's kind of where I came in. I love a legal drama. I knew this wasn't going to be a courtroom movie. Of course it wasn't going to be. But like, I loved the Sokovia Accords discussions. And I think one of the most fundamentally interesting questions about superheroes is, who are they accountable to? And how do we do that? You know, Spider-Man was involved in something and people died. Who actually decides if he should or shouldn't be held legally accountable? We know, having seen the facts, that he probably shouldn't. But like, how is those decisions made? I was super excited for a movie that was going to dive into those things. And then all the more excited when Matt Murdock was going to hold my hand as we dove into those things. And then 10 minutes into the movie, they said, yeah, actually, that's all forgotten. We're not going to dive into any of those things. And I went, what? oh, okay, that's fine. And like, yeah, if I go back and think about it, I still want that movie. But then they took us into something else. And I feel like I do understand the every person instead of just these people, the friends, because the issue is that everybody knows, you know, and in that there's a huge discussion to have about paparazzi culture and celebrity culture and like all this kind of stuff that I think, again, that's another great discussion that could have happened. Probably better for a Disney Plus series, and that's fine. I think everything's better for a Disney Plus series. But I believe Peter's motivations there. Again, I think Rob, you're right. He's a people pleaser. He's also an idealist. He wants to think there is very clear, bright lines of good and bad, right and wrong in this universe. And to me, so much of this movie is about him realizing that those things aren't true. Which is part of why I'm okay with the fact that the entire movie he's doing things that I think are ethically horrible. But I love watching him do it, and also I just love all the characters that are happening around it.
Yeah, I think that for me, part of the thing with the motivation of doing that belies part of kind of a throwaway line that Dr. Strange said, which is, you know, after all the things we've gone through and been through together, I forget that you're just a kid, right? And that the fact that he's a 17-year-old high school senior in this movie makes it where this is such a big deal. Because, you know, everybody knows who all of the Avengers are, right? Like in the MCU, they're really, I'm hard pressed to think of any real true secret identities. I mean, Black Panther had one for like the first third of Civil War, right? And then after that, everybody knew who he was, and so there aren't any. So then this for any other MCU hero would not be a big deal. Right, you know, you're an adult, you're living your life, everyone knows that you're a superhero. Okay, fine, we're moving on. Right, and in this case, because he's still trying to, you know, I think a lot of it is to go into college because he's trying to do a thing that still requires other people to accept him and allow him to do it. That it then makes it where for him in his world, it's such a big deal. That big deal though gives us the sequence of when he goes and tries to, you know, actually do the logical thing. Hey, let me talk to the administrator of the school board and see if I can convince her to let me and my friends in, or at least my friends, if not me. Right, and then we get our first glimpse of Doc Ock, and then we start the process of the villains. And so as opposed to just, you know, talking about them in segments, which we definitely could, just talk about them as a whole in this movie. In that, you know, I guess I'm going to ask my question to, I'll ask my question to you, Rob, in two parts. A, what did you think of them? And B, did they bring back too many villains? Not enough villains? Or like where do you kind of fall on that as far as, you know, how they chose which ones to bring back from all these different universes?
Oh, I think I think it's great because Doc Ock, the character is just awesome. Because what I like is that you have characters that have something redeemable, right? I mean, I think for the most part, maybe not Lizard. I don't know. We'll see. But there's something redeemable. That's I think the distinguishing trait of all of this particular set of villains. So you have that, and you know that will play out later on, and it feeds into Peter's his way of trying to fix everything and make everybody happy and have a bow on the end. I will say, yeah, are there too many villains? Yes, there are. Again, I don't know how it works so well when they start getting into their prison cells or whatever you want to call them, the conversations, the interactions. It's absurd. It works. I can't explain it.
Yeah.
Yes, there's too many. It's crazy that all makes sense. Yes, there are plot holes and why Electro is there and he's from a different universe apparently than the universe that we've even seen. I don't know, right? Like, sure. I mean, does it make complete sense? No, but I am just simply okay with the number, even though, yes, it is too many. I don't know if that answered your question, but I think I did.
It did, though. It did. And so I guess the other parts of the impressions of the villains are, at least for me, and I don't know if I was the only one that thought this, Kyle, was, why, what do you think the reasons are of why Hobgoblin wasn't included, right? When the initial, because the initial impetus of the movie with bringing back the villains, or their explanation is these villains all died fighting Spider-Man. So to me, they've left out really three holes in that, which I was curious, Kyle, what you thought about this. Why is Sandman there? Because Sandman doesn't die. B, where's Hobgoblin? And also C, where's Venom? Right? Because because Venom died at the end of Spider-Man 3 as well. Right? So then where are these characters? So do you think that it was, a good creative choice to leave these out and include Sandman because he needs a sympathetic villain? Or do you think that they should have just, stuck straight with what they initially said and ditch Sandman, bring in Hobgoblin and Venom?
I don't know. I don't think there are too many, but I do think that the characterization was not evenly distributed amongst them. Like, I think Lizard was used just about the right amount. Like, I don't think we need to spend too much time with it. I've said this too since the beginning. Like when people were talking about Spider-Man 2, saying, "Oh, it's overcrowded. There's too many in there." I'm like, you don't need a solo Rhino movie. Like, Rhino is good just like that. And the same thing for some of these guys. Like, they don't need to be the sole focus on things. None of these guys are the Joker. That they're going to have. You just have the one-to-one thing. And even in The Dark Knight, there was another villain too. The Sandman being there was a little odd to me because I like the fact that he's the morally ambiguous one. Like, he was never really a full villain. He was never really a full hero. But at the same time, then through the movie, you don't really know what his deal is. Like, why does he go off with them? Like, when they all leave, like, there's Doc Ock gets, quote unquote fixed, and then he's sort of on that side, and then they all go, and Sandman goes with them. But your motivation was go home so you can get to your daughter. Why are you running off with them? And then why are you attacking them at the statue? Like, that was neat. But everyone else, I think they were very clear, and they gave them space to work. And I think that's how you get someone like Alfred Molina back. That's how you get William Dafoe back. That's how you get even Jamie Foxx got a chance to have more fun in this than you can tell that he was having when he was, in whatever, a blue skin tight suit or whatever it was they had him in.
Well, he got to be cool in this whole movie.
Right, he got to be cool, exactly. And it's like when you see, you go, oh yeah, they really did misuse Jamie Foxx when you see that, when you can see what he does in this.
I think the villains for me are both one of the best part and one of the most frustrating parts, because Willem Dafoe, he's not on screen enough, but if he was, I'd want him, I'd be talking about him as like a nomination, because his acting is so good. Molina's acting is so good. And frankly, it's also why I think no Hobgoblin. Well, I'm not paying money for something James Franco's in. I think a lot of people are saying the same. He's, there's a lot of sexual misconduct lawsuits and stuff, but also he was a terrible actor. I don't want Hobgoblin back. He's not interesting. And
on the other side, I don't want Dane DeHaan back either.
To me, one of the things that's most interesting about the villains, which I think they somewhat screwed up, but somewhat got right, is this idea that they're not all the same, and that they had very different motivations. Peter thinks he can fix them. And the way the movie made clear that there's different ways that plays out, like for Otto, it's literally like outside intelligences are like stealing his agency. For Green Goblin, it's like, well, he's kind of had a Jekyll and Hyde split of his personality, but they're both his personality. For Sandman and for Electro, they're just people who've gone through hard things and are now making bad choices. And I loved that, and I loved that, but I also loved the team up aspect of it. Like when at first Otto wanted to help him, and even Norman wanted to help him, and just seeing Norman and Otto interact. I think you could have lost Lizard Man entirely, and the movies were just as good. And I think you could have, you could at least give Sandman and Electro either more to do, or just taken less, giving them more to do with Norman and Otto. But otherwise, I think all of it was very good. And the acting from all of them was just top notch.
Hey, question. So the implication in the trailer was that these were villains that Spider-Man killed them, but that isn't why they showed up.
Mm-mm.
Okay.
Correct. Yeah.
They showed up because
they knew
who Peter Parker
did
was by Spider-Man.
Did Electro know that?
I think he finds out.
Oh, does he?
He finds out.
Okay.
Yeah, it's been a while since I've seen that one, but I think he does find out at the end.
We're supposed to watch. I'm going to watch it again with my daughter because she'd seen the Toby one too. So when she had not seen it, so I came home from the theater and she just walked up to me and the first thing she asked was, "Toby?" I said, "Yes, Aww. Toby." And so now I've shown her Amazing Spider-Man with Andrew, and she loves Andrew Garfield as Spider-Man. Like she loves that. Yeah. Like she's like, this movie. She's like, this is really good. Why didn't people like this? And I was like, all right, well, let me tell you where the fandom was at the time, and sort of had to lay out. So
yeah, I don't get why. I think I like Garfield so much more than Toby.
Me too.
That's a whole other story. But
no, okay. And I got to ask this just because we just talked about this, and I don't want to, because we've already talked about this plot point. Trailer differences. So there were many misdirects in the trailer that did not show up in the movie. Here's one of the ones that did.
And even in the toys.
Which
we can talk about too.
So one of them is that in the trailer, when Peter comes to talk to Doctor Strange and they have the conversation with Wong's like, yeah, don't do that. And Strange winks in the trailer, not in the movie.
The trailer makes it look like Wong says, "Don't do this." And Doctor Strange goes, "Yeah, I'm totally not going to do that." Wink, and then he waits for him to leave, and then it's like, "Oh, all right, Daddy's gone. Let's get into the liquor cabinet."
So I feel a little bad because I feel a little bit like I'm hawking a late night product or something, or like convincing people of a cult to join. But I have to say, I felt such a sense of vindication over the last day or two, because I have heard from a lot of people saying that all of the speculation, all the trailer content, all the rumors about would this character, that character in, they felt that it took away some of the surprise of it all. I never saw a trailer. I didn't read any rumor stuff. And a lot of people were like, what? I felt like I enjoyed the movie so much more because I had no idea what the trailer, like I had a sense that there was going to be something about maybe Toby or Garfunkel. Garfield, whatever his name is. I'm still getting it wrong. But yeah, so I do want to hold off. Like, I think it is great to talk about trailers if that's your thing. But like, to me, this movie is a great example of where, getting into all the theories can really just, it doesn't always make the movie better.
But I think the strength of this movie is that it works both ways. Because like Robin knew probably more than anybody, but like what I like to do is I will watch what the studio wants me to see. So like I will watch any released trailer for them, but I don't go seeking out anything, above beyond. I don't seek out, gossip and rumors and that kind of stuff. I mean, stuff filters in just because the internet is awful and people are terrible, and but I sort of like I want to see what they want me to know going in. But I think, and I had a fantastic experience with it too. So I think that's the strength of this movie, is sometimes a movie is only as good as what you don't know. But sometimes even knowing, like, at this point, every rumor turned out to be true. Like, I think everything I heard was like, oh, it's possible that Charlie Cox. Oh, it's possible that, and like, they're all in there. And it was sort of like, oh, it's sort of like, I didn't get the sense of, oh my gosh, I'm so surprised. I got the sense of, oh, good. Like, let's like check that off. One less thing to worry about.
Yeah, I guess I find I'm also a membership of Matthew's tribe there, where once I identified that I'm going to watch a movie, then I don't watch any trailers for it at all. And I actually applied that universally. So I knew once they said the word spider and then followed it with the word man, I was going to see the movie. So therefore, I needed to see no trailers, right? So yeah, and I found that those some of those surprises, like I was very surprised to see Charlie Cox, right? And I did not know, as far as all the villains that would come in, I did not, I didn't know that, I didn't even know Green Goblin was going to be in there, right? It was great that he was, and I was like, that's awesome because Willem Dafoe's amazing. But, I think I have often found that the less I see any trailers, the more I do like the movie. But yeah, so then I guess before we move on past that, is there anything else, Matthew, you want to talk about as far as what your thoughts are on the choice, on their choice of their solution, right? Like, was it Peter's either own volition? Do you think that May is an outsized influence of it? Do you think that there's, as far as, the decision to fix them, and then does that then alter everything else that occurs in those other universes? Are you in a sense creating a butterfly effect of where you're going to completely alter and change everything that goes on in those other worlds? Because when they go back home, assumably, especially like just take Norman Osborn as an individual. Well, when he goes back home, I mean, they haven't really discussed how time works in this because they have to explain why Peter Parker's 3 different ages. Let's move on. But then that implies that he's going to go back to a universe where he is mentally sane, but everything he built his entire life is gone.
Your future is your future. Your past is your past. They've already explained it.
Yeah.
Yeah, to me, I would love to talk about his decision to fix them, but to me, what you're getting at is the how many angels dance on a head of a pin thing. That I can't. I love if other people want to get into that question, and Kyle and Rob go for it. But
I'd love to have that conversation, but that's a very different conversation that goes off in a different way. But yeah, like getting back to the motivation part, I think is what was more relevant.
So for me, there's two things that I think are fundamentally wrong of what Spider-Man does, and one is simple, the other is a lot more complex, and we'll spend more time on the other. But the first one is, and it's a problem they had in Jessica Jones and things like that. I am all for, rehabilitation, not punishment. I am all for giving people second chances. The thing is, if you are not sure that you can stop someone from doing bad things, and you release them out into the world to do bad things when you could stop them at any moment, you are now morally responsible for the things that they do. And the movie sidestepped that issue because they somehow decided that with Green Goblin, Sandman, and Electro out doing their own thing for hours and hours, no innocent people got hurt, which I think is kind of a cop-out to allow Spider-Man to do the thing he did, because he would be morally responsible for every person who got hurt. Like, I want them to be, I don't like pushing the button. I think there's got to be a better option, but I think you have to say it is deeply irresponsible to say, I know these people are running around, they could be hurting people, but I'm not going to stop them in this moment because I want to try and stop them in a more humane way. So that's the first one. And I to be like, I even hate saying that because I want always the more humane thing, but I think you can't put other people's lives at risk to do that. The bigger thing, though, is I think one of the things I love so much about the villains is there's an incredible metaphor here for mental illness in terms of do you punish people for their deeds, or do you try to fix them so they don't do those things? Great conversation, but it forgets one vital piece of the question. Does the person who you want to fix consent to being fixed? And I think that's why I love that there's a difference, because I think like in mental illness, like you can have if a person's raving drunk and or an addict or something like that, that's one thing where you might say, okay, we're going to try and we're going to non-consensually try to, get some methadone into their system or whatever it is. On the other side though, I worked as a disability rights law firm for a while, at a law firm, I wasn't a lawyer, with patients with schizophrenia, where people, their parents were trying to sue to make them take medication to fix them because they were leading lives that people thought aren't lives that a normal person would want to live. But these folks did want to live that life. And so to me, the comparison here is take Otto. Otto, we know, has outside influences affecting him, these artificial intelligences. You want to fix him even though he doesn't consent. Well, it's not him not consenting, it's them, so go for it. Electro there's no outside influence. Electro is just a person who's been marginalized and abused all of his life. Now he has the power to do something about it, and he's doing terrible things about it. But so just taking that power away without his consent as a way of saying, because to me, he's now still the same person who, if he gets power in another way, he's going to hurt people again. So yeah, I mean, and same, I think you can put Norman, I think Norman, you can see through the lens of is this dissociative personality disorder or dissociative identity disorder? I'm not a therapist, I'm not claiming it, but you could look at it as he's got altered personality here. So does Norman get to make the decision, or does the more, Mr. Hyde part of Norman, the Green Goblin part? So yeah, so all that to say, I think there's a very rich conversation, and the movie is starting that. I don't think it was intending to, but I that's why, to me, and I think I'm okay with it because it kind of, at the end, Peter doesn't get what he wants. But I think, to me, those are the two places where I really wrestle with Peter's motivation, where I just feel like he's putting people's lives at risk in order to save people, but even the people he's saving, they're not consenting to it. And that That to me has to matter.
I think that that conversation, definitely that topic's very interesting, but I think it is also case by case differently. Like with Norman Osborn, I think that he is consenting to it. He's just, because his motivation, if you look back even why he got the way he was being ambitious, he took the gas or serum, whatever he took and all that, because he wanted to get the project funded and keep going. His intent wasn't this. Now with Electro, yes, he's been marginalized. He has some power, so now he's decided that with that power he wants to hurt others, and that definitely is a different kettle of fish there as well, because I think that specific one does lend more to what you're saying, right? Even the lizard didn't intend to be that way, right? And so since the initial, I guess you could take the prime movers. If the prime movers didn't intend to end up the way they were, then you could make an argument that they would be comfortable being put back to normal, so they can make their own choices. But I think that the one character you get the most out of that discussion and thought process is Electro, because he's not artificially altered in some way that was against his intent.
Yeah, I think like Doc Ock is at one end, Electro's at the other, and then the other three are in a gray area between. Because like with the lizard especially, you're right, it's not what he wanted, but his mental faculties are not being affected at all. So like the question of like, does he have the ability to consent to something or not, I think is a very open question. At least I don't remember that part of the movie too well, but it seemed like he was the same. His mental goals before he became a lizard and afterwards were basically the same.
Well, yeah, it's. I was actually talking about this when I showed it to my daughter too, because she was talking about some of the things you're talking about in terms of what his motivations are, because he's a person who has a disability. I don't know if they specify like if like he lost the limb or if he didn't have it, but you start out from this happened to me. I want to get back to quote unquote normal. So like so he's doing all this sciences to get himself back to there, and then the next thing is like, but do you need to be like? Why is that a bad thing for you to have something that's different about you? And then you sort of draw that line to, then if I can do this and I can fix myself, quote unquote, fix myself, then I can fix other people. And if you just keep drawing that line farther into supervillain territory, then why don't we make everybody into lizards? Like it's like, okay, there's a big jump there, but that's so at what point did he sort of lose the ball? Like, at what point did he go from, a person wanting to help it to, I don't know, genocidal maniac? Like there's something in there that happens. So yeah, I don't know. I don't even having just watched the movie, I don't know exactly where that is, but it's interesting because they sort of brush up against that, but then he just ends up being the green scaly thing that runs around and claws people.
Like, I think what the movie was trying to say is that that in every case, the actual person is not in control. There's an outside influence, and so they cannot give consent, and so it's okay to fix them. And I don't think they sold that, which I think is kind of great, because I think it raises a really great question, but I'm not sure it's what the movie was wanting to do.
Okay, so let's move on and talk about the multiple Spider-Man. So since we had multiple villains from multiple universes, we also were treated with multiple Spider-Man from multiple universes. So I think we touched on earlier that we definitely all enjoyed the relationship they had with each other. But Rob, do you think it was a net positive or negative to bring them all back, right? Because you could have had this same situation where only Tom Holland Spider-Man has to deal with all these different villains and figure everything out. Or, do you think that it was an addition to the movie to bring them all back, or a bit of a cheat to make things easier to bring them all back? What have you thought about as far as having multiple Spider-Man as well, and then, alongside all the multiple universe villains?
Oh, it's not. I mean, the cheat. Okay, this was infinitely more complex to do this. So, I mean, it's not I think at least, it adds a whole different level to the fabric of that third act. So, no, it's a net positive. It was incredible in that the moments you had, whether it's Andrew Garfield and the MJ moment, that's just outrageously incredible. It is the fact that
I found myself getting emotional.
Oh my God, are you kidding?
I was literally crying about it in the theater, and even when I explained to someone afterwards, I started crying.
Yeah, if you don't know,
meant everything to me.
Right? No, if you don't know it from there, but they did enough to make you realize Andrew Garfield showing the emotion of it you got all the breadcrumbs that you needed to know what that meant when it happened. That was incredible. The whole scene, you're right. I mean, Kyle mentioned this with Toby's back. I mean, the fact that they went, I mean, they've mentioned that before. That was I think in Spider-Man 2, they kind of mentioned that or something. No, this one, they have Andrew Garfield snapping his back in place. I mean, it's just amazing, right? But the whole idea, it is worth it because the whole idea that you are helping Tom Holland's Spider-Man reach that level of maturity to know, dude, this is what we do. Like that moment. And then to break the wall when he runs back. I mean, our audience, I'm sure your audience is, when he runs back and gives the hug and goes, thank you, thank you, thank you. Wow. What an amazing, the only other show I've ever seen break walls like that is Doctor Who, where that is speaking directly to these guys for everything that they did there, what their characters meant to the whole tapestry of comic book movies. I couldn't even have imagined. I knew these guys were going to be in the movie because if they weren't, we would have rioted. I could never have imagined moments like that. Like the fact that those moments all happened is just the moment where they all get to point each other like the cartoon in the lab. Are you kidding?
Or when he says Peter and they all three turn around and say,
just no Peter Parker. Wait, doesn't help. Jeez. I have two things there. One, just on that, like him catching MJ moment, which, first of all, I just have to say, after watching the Tobey Maguire movies again recently, nothing against Kirsten Dunst, but like, talk about how much what we expect of the damsel in distress character has changed in 20 years. Because Kirsten Dunst is beautiful and does nothing in those movies except stand there and be beautiful and get rescued and scream. And Zendaya gets to have such a great character development and so many quirks. But to me, the thing that really hit me about the Garfield catching her, which was so powerful, is how much they trusted the audience.
Yes. Because
how much could you have met? How many times have we seen that kind of a thing? And then suddenly we see the flashback that as he's reaching for MJ, we see the footage of his, of Gwen dying. Like, they didn't do that. They trusted the audience. She asked him, "Are you okay?" And he didn't tell her why it affected him. That to me is such a sophisticated kind of movie making that I don't normally expect from the MCU. And like we were joking before about how many times we have to see the damn like pearls breaking with the Batman story. They trusted us in that moment, and I think it's why I think it was the single most powerful moment of the movie for me. At least
it was for me. I mean, like that. There's a couple. I say I cried 3 times, and like that was the one that got me. And then even afterwards, my wife was like, "What was it that really affected you?" I was like, "It was," and like I started again. I was like, "Oh, just thinking about it made me do that." But so I want to step out of this discussion into the larger fandom thing, because fandom as a thing for anything in the geek world can be toxic. There are awful people out there with very.
I'm a Star Wars fan. I have no idea what you're talking about.
Star Wars is what I was going to talk about. Star Wars. So there's a lot of entitlement. There's a lot of gatekeeping. There's a lot of negativity. But a couple of times, like, so for those of us who are older, who have been through, the ones who were beaten up for reading these comic books that are now making billions of dollars, it gives me a lot of joy to see people talking about Thanos. When I'm like, oh man, like they used to rip up my comic books that had Thanos in them, and now like the kids are wearing them on T-shirts. This is amazing. So there are still that negative, awful things, that people being negative and awful things. So when we were at Star Wars Celebration, Hayden Christensen came out, and the audience gave him the most thunderous applause, this wave of kindness, and we love you. And then Ahmed Best came out, and if ever there was a person who's been treated the worst by the fandom, it's Ahmed Best, and the love that came from there.
For those who don't, you want to say,
yes, Ahmed Best played Jar Jar Binks and faced the worst. I mean, almost to the point of driving him to suicide. Like, I mean, it was terrible. But he comes out on the stage, and the love and affection that went out towards him of like, we love you, like ignore those people, like this you are part of this family, you are welcome here. When I was watching this movie with the fandom, when Andrew Garfield showed up, the people went crazy, and it made my heart grow 3 sizes. Like, that movie had gotten so much crap online. People have made so much fun of it about it's a Sony, it's a Merc. It was just all about trying to get more movies and too much stuff and overstuffed and all, and like he's emo and all these things. But that audience that I was in loved him. They like unequivocally was like, that's us, that's our Spider-Man. And they did the same thing with Toby, but like Toby has a much longer thing, and he was the first sort of big time Spider-Man. Andrew did not get that kind of fan embrace that he did, but now I feel like he has. And I think I'm hoping people go back and look at those movies again and see that there is a lot of really good stuff in there. I mean, like, not perfect, but like they are not worthy of being as maligned as they were. And I think that's coming around. And so that made me so joy. And to see that when MJ goes over the edge and Tom gets knocked away, and then he comes shooting in. The audience went, there was this big like thing, and then he catches her, and everyone just exploded. It was like, and I couldn't. I was like, these are my people. Like, I'm in the community. Like, I know there's a lot of stuff going on with people and not being safe and going out, and I get that. I 100% understand it. I'm like, one of my family just had a breakthrough case. I get it. But like, there is something magical about being in the theater with the people and having everyone on the same page, having the same emotion at the same time. It was glorious. And yeah, that for me, that was the moment. There's a couple other really, really fantastic ones, but like that for me was so much about not only the filmmaking, but legacy and fandom and embracing the past, and not shying away from the things that were quote unquote a failure. And it just it meant everything to me.
So what was one of the other, well, you mentioned it now a couple of times, now I'm curious, what were one of the other moments that with the multiple Spider-Man that you felt were as emotionally impactful?
Well, I guess what it comes down to is of course the big emotional gut punch to this whole movie, which we haven't talked about yet, is the death of Aunt May. Like that was, I was sort of, it was building up to it. I'm like, oh, are they really going to do this? I was sort of like, is this how it's going? I mean, even when she was just going down to the lobby, I was like, like I kind of felt what they were doing. And for me, like her dying and saying the words, saying with great power, that was huge. The fact that she got to do it, and that there was no Uncle Ben, like all the way through, we've sort of been wondering, was that someone from back? Like, no, it wasn't. There was never there. That character doesn't exist in Tom Holland's origin story. But for me, it was this is acting and filmmaking and just basically in screenwriting. It wasn't about like her saying it. It wasn't about her dying. It wasn't about the death, which was all fine. It was when Peter looks over to Happy and just conveys what happened with just his look. It killed me. Because Happy knows too, and that's two great actors, and they probably weren't even on set at the same time. Like, just the look and the reaction. Oh, that was what, like, sort of when it was. I started thinking like, oh no, it's Aunt May. That's really sad. And, like, that made it like emotionally resonant with me, and I was like, oh, I didn't think it would come at me that hard, and it really did.
I mean, I get goosebumps just hearing you talk about it, and I think this to me again is where they trust the audience, because avoiding the trope, because I've seen this kind of thing happen in a lot of movies where the next thing is that because of Happy's feelings for May, now he abandons Peter because he's so mad at Peter for getting May killed. And so now Peter's even more alone. And that trope has been used again and again. And so when Happy was clearly sharing the grief, but there was just none of that, it was just so good to me. And if you don't mind, I want to back up a bit just to the three Peters, because I think I don't think I ever really connected this until our conversation, but I think one of the things that the three Peters did so well is kind of like, Tom Holland, Parker, and all of them, when they're kids, they're looking for someone else to guide them. He wants Tony Stark to help him, but Tony can't really, and then Tony dies. He wanted Mysterio to be his mentor, and that didn't work out well. He wanted, Doctor Strange to be, but Doctor Strange is maybe not the best, because he's kind of like, oh, I'm sorry, kid, you're feeling really bad. Let me give you a couple bottles of multiverse vodka to help you get through the pain. Like, not a responsible babysitter, Mr. Strange. And so for the movie to get to a place of the only people who can really help Peter Parker are Peter Parkers. Like, there's such poetry to that. It's just such a beautiful thing of like, the three different generational Peter Parkers.
I mean, speaking of that, I think that was an amazing moment. My favorite moment of the movie, there's a bunch, but my favorite is he's getting ready to pull the cap. The moment from that we saw in Civil War, the moment that we saw in Falcon and the Winter Soldier, he's about to kill him with the shield, but with the thing. And the fact that when Toby comes in and full on stops him, and then Andrew's there to toss the medicine, right? The whole idea, it's the literal visual representation of Peter Parker is a good guy regardless of the universe, right? And it speaks to, this is what we do. I just love the way Toby delivers that. It is the freeing of him of all of his training wheels. There is no more rope. That is the full circle that this trilogy concludes is he is now Spider-Man because this is it. This was it. And I think I heard somebody say this. I read this online a few places that have talked about this. You never saw Tom Holland's origin because the whole trilogy is his origin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's very true.
Like that it wasn't the spider bite. No, it was all of that to this moment of the soft reboot, as I like people are calling it. This is you now, no net. You're doing it.
And it's that he's a good person, but he's not a perfect person, because he did have that moment of wanting to kill Goblin, but normally he pulls himself back. And here he did. It was other versions of him. And in the same way, like we didn't get that third Garfield movie because, fan stuff. And like, I very much get that. I was excited about them because I thought they were just too soon at the time. But one of the big questions was going to be, so what happens to him after Gwen's death? And the speculation was he's going to have to go through that kind of like darkness, period, and pull himself out. That they kind of tried to show in Toby 3 with Venom. It was just a disaster. And so to have that entire movie happen.
Come on now.
To have that entire movie happen in just Garfield's one or two lines of, I went bitter for a while.
I stopped pulling my punches. I'm like, oh, what a line.
Like, I want to throw one thing out. We can all argue about which one of these three is the best Spider-Man, and I think I'm on Team Holland. We can debate that. I think Garfield is the best pure actor of the three. Like, just in terms of the pathos, the emotion, and maybe it's because he had more to work with, but just what I got out of Garfield, like I felt like just his face, his tone conveyed so much so powerfully.
I agree. I think he was a great actor, even back then, but like he has leveled up. Like everything is just even from Tick Tick Boom to going from that to this, you can see he brought all of those skills to this. And it's sort of like, oh, now I want that Spider-Man. I want like the Spider-Man as you are now, not to go back and do all the other stuff, but like from this point forward, like show me that guy.
I really enjoy Tom Holland's performance of Spider-Man, especially since he stays young, keeps him youthful. I think it is the closest to what I feel, the way I felt when I read the comics books of how I felt Spider-Man's personality was. I think Tom Holland's performance of that portrays it the best. All that being said, totally. Tobey Maguire is my Spider-Man.
Okay.
Warts and all. That's my guy. The Spider-Man 2 was for me one of the more like a lot of the emotionally impactful movie for me with Spider-Man 2 was because I felt that it's long drawn out and it's hard to watch sometimes on rewatch, right? But there was an emotional payoff at the end that to me that I thought that they earned. It wasn't the normal what I consider normal superhero fare at the time, and I do recognize that it's a bit of a quirk bat, right? Like those movies come out now and they're not as good, right? But at that time, for what our superhero diet was at that time, what they gave us in those movies was far and away better than anything else going on, in that immediate vicinity of time, right? And so, I guess I appreciate and still honor and revere that because the MCU is flat out the best, right? It's the Rolls Royce of comic book movies. It's so good that the MCU is so good. They give us a movie this good and it's reasonable for this not to be your favorite MCU movie, as great as it was, right? And so so I think that the vocabulary and everything of comic book movies has changed so dramatically that how we view them now, and I understand that about the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man, but I still appreciate and kind of revere what they were at that time, and I choose to hold on to it.
I think you make a really good point there, and I did not grow up with comic books. I was not a superhero guy. I thought superheroes were cheesy. I wanted nothing to do with superhero media until I saw the first Tobey Maguire movie. And at the time, I loved it. And I do not think we get the MCU. I don't think we get that Tony Stark Iron Man movie without that Tobey Maguire movie. And so and to me, for me, the cringiness of how they've aged is such that I don't feel like I can say that he's my favorite now, but I do think everything else you said there of just how important they were and how groundbreaking they were, and that everything else stems from that. Yeah, I can 100% agree with that.
And of course, my Spider-Man is Nicholas Hammond. So
What?
That's true.
that was just for Rob.
Yeah.
So Rob is Nicholas Hammond your Spider-Man?
Well, that's, I mean, the TV show, right? He's the one in the,
there was a 1970s TV movie series of Amazing Spider-Man. The first live action Spider-Man was Nicholas Hammond. Like, that was the first Spider-Man I ever saw. So when I was, 5, 6, whatever it was, those were on.
All right.
I mean, honestly, Jake Johnson is my Spider-Man right now, but I understand that.
No argument.
All right. So Rob, so we've all kind of waited on which one of our Spider-Man. Who's your Spider-Man and why?
Oh, I do really think Tom Holland is the comic book. It is what the character, whenever you read or thought about who is Spider-Man, I think Tom Holland has just absolutely crushed it. I do. And I love Tobey Maguire. I was not a fan of the Andrew Garfield movies. I hadn't really seen the Amazing Spider-Man 2 because I loved the origin story that Tobey Maguire did. But I think Tom Holland just really, we've seen him more than any other actor in the role ever. This is like the 5th, 6th time in a movie. And there'll be more, I think. No, one more. There's at least one more appearance coming. Contractually obligated. So no, I just think
I don't watch trailers.
Yeah, no, I think I think he's just nailed it. I think he just got the youthfulness in a way that no other actor has done, and just that incredible naiveness that just is what you imagine when I think of the character.
I think there will come a time that, just like we talk about Batman, we're going to talk about Spider-Man, like who did the best. But I think the character is strong enough that you can have these multiple interpretations, and it's fine. Like, you don't have to say best. Like, you don't have, because as soon as Tom Holland showed up in Civil War and said, "You have a metal arm? That's so cool." I was like, my mind exploded. I was like, of course he'd be a science nerd. Like, that's the thing. It's like, it's not about superheroes, it's not about costumes. Like, he's just excited that the guy has a metal arm, and he's like, how does it work? I was like, oh, that's a totally different take on Peter Parker than I've seen before. And like, yeah, all right, it just opens up a whole different way for them to go. And I was super excited with what they're doing. But like, everyone, I think they did a great job in terms of what they were given, because like they're like Andrew Garfield is the sort of like tortured emo, like doesn't have parents and like he doesn't fit in anywhere kind of stuff too. And we had the absolute bad luck of Toby, where it's just like nothing could ever go right, and it's just like, even you watch it now and it's just like, okay, stop beating up on the poor guy. but they're all each different interpretations, and they all work in their own way.
We can have these debates, I'm sure, but I have to ask, would anyone disagree, though, that like Kirsten Dunst, Emma Stone, both great, both very crushworthy if we watched those as kids, but Zendaya just absolutely takes the cake as the love interest of Spider-Man?
Well, this Spider-Man,
to me, that one is no question.
This Spider-Man. I think that, again, I think you're going to enter into what were they given? Right, Zendaya's performance and everything. I mean, as an actor, I'm not even trying to judge them as actors, right? But the script and the way their character was written allows this version of MJ to be very different than the Gwen was or MJ and Kirsten Dunst.
Oh, and to be clear, I wasn't acting just about the acting. To me, this is a much more better written character. Much better. This is a much more interesting love interest than either Maguire or Garfield got.
I agree with that as far as who she is. I think that I interestingly enough, for me, and again, I'm going to refer back to my reference of Spider-Man 2. I felt that it made. When he ends up with MJ at the end of Spider-Man 2 for Tobey Maguire, to me it made a lot of sense. It felt very earned. When they end up together, near the end, as far as what is it, Far From Home, it just felt to me like, okay, well, that's what's supposed to happen. right? It didn't feel the same way to me the way they wrote it. But as far as the personality of MJ in this, it's a far richer character. She does have more agency, more to do. I think the best friend is great, and having the best friend character and everything, and what they're doing and how they are actually bringing in another little mini adventure, onto the side of what we're seeing with all these other Spider-Men. And so then I don't know, Rob, were there any other performances that were in this movie of the lesser, the non-villains or non-Spider-Man characters that either jumped out to you, either their story or the performance the actors were bringing?
Well, I gotta say, I can't believe that they stuffed this with everybody. Like the scene when he goes back to school and there's the coach from the detention. Like, whoa, man, you got everybody in this, which totally made me laugh. I think I'll tell you, Marissa Tomei just really, this was phenomenal. Like the whole death sequence. I mean, she's a great actress, but this has been an interesting character to play, kind of more or less for laughs. And that whole sequence just really surprised me. How much she got to really put some teeth in that. I think that would be it. I mean, all the other, obviously all the main characters. And I will just say one other thing about MJ, the MJ character. I don't know if it's selective memory. She's got nothing to do in Homecoming for the most part, except brood.
Right. She's angry with her father. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like, it's just, and plus he's got the other girlfriend, right? Like Far From Home, it's still a bit of like cat and mouse in terms of the relationship. This is amazing how mature the relationship is and her role in this. Like, she is great. I mean, let me tell you, my daughter was of the age where Step It Up was a common fixture in our household on Disney Channel. Wow. She has really got a bright future because I think this has been a great vehicle for her career.
I would just say on rewatching Homecoming, I actually think Zendaya, I would argue with you about what she gets to do there, because I think just the like comedic like commentary that she does and everything, but also knowing, like, 'cause when I first watched it, I had no idea she was going to be MJ. Like, because I thought it was just, it's an interesting person named Michelle, who was kind of like the Greek chorus. But what you can see how obsessed she is with Peter, and not just with Peter, but that she's paying attention. There's all these little nuances they give about like her noticing him being away and stuff like that. That I can get. I think the first time you watch it, it might not come across, but I think she has a lot more to do in Homecoming than we might see at first.
I guess overall, I'm curious then, especially for you, Kyle, what your opinion is on. So, what do you think about will be the fallout of the story for the MCU? Like, what are they going to do? Because so for me, this is in a kind of preface it with my thought of this. They've unlike Matthew, I don't have to disagree with you this. I did like Loki and what they did, how they introduced the multiverse. I also like that they ended it with Kang, right? So Kang the Conqueror. I need more Kang the Conqueror in all of these movies.
I agree with that.
Right? And so this is now exactly. Yeah. So they introduced them in Loki, and then they've introduced the multiverse in this new Spider-Man movie. They introduced it and then they close it back up, right? They close it back up, but you still know that Kang should come somewhere, right? And so they've opened it, introduced the idea, closed it back up. So then what do you think will be the fallout of this story in the overall MCU? Like, what do you put on your crystal ball? Where do you think we're going with this next?
Well, I'm with Matthew in that I worry about multiversity. Like, I really worry that, because if you go back to, and this is, I would say there's a couple of things I always roll out when we talk about this kind of stuff. By the rules of Endgame, there is no reason why they couldn't travel back and just catch Black Widow and bring her back. There's nothing in their lore, in their setup, that would stop them from doing that. Which means you could do that with anyone. Which means death means nothing, because you can just pluck somebody out of an alternate reality that's almost just like, because when you go back, you're creating another path on that one. So that means, so you can just take them from there and it's fine. Everything's, you don't need stones, you don't need anything. All you need is Tony Stark's little hand thing and some Pym particles, and no one has to die ever.
Well, but just remember, What If taught us that there can be fixed moments in time that cannot be changed, even if that fixed moment in time only occurs in the middle of a What If story. with nonsensical things. She can't.
This is I don't know. This I was worried. No, I have my own rant too.
No, you're right.
I'm right with you. I mean, like there's because like you have to close those loops, guys. Like when you introduce something like this, you have to say, and now because the Infinity Stones are destroyed, it no longer works or something. You need to close your loop, because if not, then things can go badly very quickly. Watch the first season of Heroes if you want to see what happens when people don't do their homework about writing superheroes, and you give two people the most powerful powers you can have, and then watch go, oh wait, this one character can solve all problems instantly. How do we throw all the things at him? It can go very, very badly. So it is a tool, and I just hope that they're using it with care and discretion, and that they are somewhere that there is a big book that says here's what you can and can't do. But having it this way, like having a one sort of one rope, one gimmick, one little thing of those who know Peter Parker, is Spider-Man. Those are the ones who get pulled in, and then there actually is a multiversal sort of comic booky 616 kind of rule about why these ones, in particular ones that we've seen before, but that gets super nerdy. We don't need that far, but there is a comic book precedent for why these ones would come over, is because they're very close proximity wise in terms of the multiverse. So all that being said, I'm interested in what they could do with this, but I am worried that we're going to be seeing like multiple everythings. I think the multiversal war. Okay, fine, but then once you do that, okay, now there's 10 Captain Americas, now there's 10 Iron Men. There's okay, and like it's like you can do that, but to what end?
Mephisto.
Like, to what is the
Mephisto.
Like, this was a great moment in terms of like when they narrowed it down to people who know Spider-Man, and they opened it up and you could see there's Kraven the Hunter, there's Rhino, like all those kind of things. Oh, that's exciting. Like all these, like you can see all these ones from different universes coming over. That could be really exciting, but it can also end up just being a cosmic mess where you just take all your action figures and dump them out in a pile on the floor. So I worry that this is where we're going.
You mean Tobey Maguire Spider-Man 3 is what you're going for?
Yeah, I mean, like this movie technically is overstuffed, but they were very careful in how they did it and who they chose. They could have thrown in any actor and made him any Spider-Man villain and put him in here, and it would not have affected the story at all, but it would have made the movie weaker. So I think they were smart in terms of limiting it down to ones we had seen before, because they didn't have to. The multiverse is open. Like you can have whatever, it's Hugh Jackman shows up as Kraven
Miles
the Hunter.
Morales
Sure,
could have
why
popped
not?
in. I mean, right? Like,
okay.
Right.
Yeah.
You could have pulled him from Spider-Verse. You could have had any of those. You could have had Jake show up as Peter B. Parker. There's no reason why you couldn't. You have to measure it and be very, very careful with it. Go ahead,
Okay,
Rob.
Tell us why the multiverse is great.
So here's the thing. Well, no, it is. But here's the thing that I got completely frustrated with. Where's the TVA?
Yeah, right.
Because I counted 17 Nexus events in this movie. I mean, pulling out, Matthew talked about this. You pulled all those villains out, you fixed them and sent them back in. 12 Nexus events, right? Like there's Nexus events all over this place, and the TVA's still there. Kang's there, and I don't understand. So here's something that blows my mind. Here's a big thing that blew my mind, not in a good way, and a little thing that blew my mind. Big thing is, was this fissure in the multiverse related to what happened in Kang's office when they let it run out? Like, hold on a second.
That's a question. When in that, and because, Kang
Right.
talked about how things are happening at the same time. So like this is after that?
I mean, and granted, I'm sure this is why the next movie, Multiverse of Madness, because I am sure that there's a way to connect all this, but how do you not? My mind is blowing up at that. Plus the other thing is, okay, again, I appreciate the soft reboot of Peter, but let me get this straight. So the final spell is everyone will forget that's Peter Parker as Spider-Man. So Flash's book Is it still published?
Oh, this makes no sense whatsoever.
Oh, yeah.
All the YouTube videos that are out in the universe. So how does that exactly work? People see it and there's just a hole in their eye that they can't see Peter. Like,
I think the spell covers that. I feel that if you're going to go with the spell can affect memories, let's just say that technology is not a problem either.
but what about the book?
But here's the question. We know that Spider-Man still exists because he meets Happy at May's grave, and Happy says, "I knew her through Spider-Man." So what happens when Peter says, "Oh yeah," shoots away?
Right?
Guess who I am?
He could just tell them exactly.
He can't. Okay, so they did this in the comic, and they did it much worse. So like this is a much even with all the problems, this is a much cleaner version of what they did in the comics, because that basically when he can from this point on he can tell anybody that he's Spider-Man and it's fine. It was a one-time spell. It's not an ongoing thing.
Okay, I think I know where you're going to like it.
So so at this point he could have just turned to Happy and be like, "Hey, by the way, I'm Spider-Man," and it's fine. Like, he'd be like, "Oh, you're," and it turns into a whole thing. Like he'd have to explain it all. So he can. But he just doesn't. He chooses not to.
No, and he doesn't because they show you the moments. He doesn't tell Happy because he's standing in front of May's grave. He doesn't tell MJ because her hair goes back and he sees the Band-Aid and he's reminded, that was because of this.
Yeah, right.
Like, I get it.
Yeah, maybe they're better off.
Which I will say, I wonder if you all got the sense. To me, that moment where he says, he basically decides, I'm not going to tell MJ because if she's close to me, she'll get hurt. He basically found a better way to do what Toby tried to do at the end of the first movie, because the thing is, once MJ knows, once Kirsten Dunst MJ knows that you can't put the ketchup back in the bottle, but so I feel like that's part of why that didn't work for Toby. It felt very intentional to me that here he's able to do the same thing. He's able to walk away, but this time Zendaya isn't crying as she watches him walk away. She just doesn't know.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah, I think he realizes their lives are better without him and his problems being in them. Like he sees them, oh, they're happy. They're going to MIT. Like their lives are going fine. Yeah, maybe I am the problem. So maybe telling them I think is selfish on my part. And maybe I should just like let it go and be like, okay, that maybe like it's better that I step away.
All right. So then the question is, because this is where I do see if you can make the deal work, you could move forward with the underground Spider-Man movie with Tom Holland, and you've got Daredevil and other characters, and it becomes a totally different take.
We even have a villain who Spider-Man likes to fight, having been reintroduced to the MCU recently.
Yes. And it seems like there's a lot of younger heroes that are showing up right now that he fits right in with. Like it makes a lot of sense that he would cross paths with, let's say, a Kate Bishop.
Well, especially because Ocean, you were talking about this before about how most of the MCU characters are out of the closet. Like they're not hiding behind masks. There's only one other major MCU character I can think of who also has a secret identity: Matt Murdock. My dream is Disney Plus basically just does the Netflix shows and accepts that blood and gore, like to show violence can be awful, is a good thing. I'm not holding out hope, but it might well be that Daredevil becomes an important part of the next, because we know that Sony's doing a whole new trilogy of Spider-Man movies.
Well, Amy
probably.
Pascal would like to have that happen. Yeah.
What if Charlie Cox Murdoch is a big part of those? That.
So there is an interesting reason why this movie was released on the day it was, in between the last two episodes of Hawkeye. And I think we all noted that the end of this movie ends during the holidays in New York City.
Yeah, this is going back to that wonderful season of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. where it ended right up to Winter Soldier. Like, they pulled it off again.
I think there's going to be a massive surprise in the final episode of Hawkeye.
Does the last episode of Hawkeye not have enough water to carry right now?
It could. Dude, we just watched a movie that had 23 main characters.
I don't want to spoil Hawkeye episode 5, not just for you, Ocean, but for any listeners. But if Daredevil does not show up in Hawkeye, like something's wrong. Like, they've set it up in a way
that's my point. Absolutely.
I think you're setting yourself up for disappointment.
Well, you know what? Kevin Feige tried to tell everybody that about No Way Home, and somehow they doubled down.
Yeah.
Vulture was kind enough to compile a list of lies.
Just this once, I'm all in on Mephisto. I avoided all the Mephistos every time, but just this once.
Well, this is who he makes the deal with.
He's the Mephisto of Hell's Kitchen. It's the Mephisto
He's leveling up from Strange.
This is why the Doctor Strange spell is so much better than selling your soul to giving up your marriage in order to save Aunt May.
So I think it's fair to say that we think that the fallout of this will be that the MCU now has a quite honestly limitless amount of possibilities since they've introduced the multiverse. So I guess the last thing I wanted to tie up before we get to rating the movie was, what did you guys think of the post credits? For me, I guess the easiest one to talk about, I can do it in reverse order. The second one is just a trailer for Doctor Strange. So if you haven't seen a trailer for Doctor Strange yet, here's your chance. The first one, though, was, having Tom Hardy's Venom, in it, talking in a bar, hanging out, right? And then leaving a small bit of his symbiote behind to allow them to introduce Venom into this version of the MCU. I mean, what do you think that's kind of either a ham-fisted way to do it, or does it flow to make sense? Because you got to think, from a outside, from just the real world possibility, they can make a Venom 3, right? I mean, not everybody loved the second Venom. It still made decent money. So they could stake with that. But then would the MCU then get the rights to say, we have the rights now to create our own Venom, and that we'll bring Venom into the MCU?
So I will start the conversational gambit with, this was the biggest thud in the movie for me, because there's no reason he should be there, because he doesn't know that Peter is Spider-Man. There's no reason that of all of them he should.
Tom Hardy doesn't.
Neither does Venom.
It's the wrong Venom.
They're from a different universe.
That 70s show guy, Venom, knows. But
no, wait.
Yes. Yeah.
But I think though,
Grace knows.
From the post-credit scene from Let There Be Carnage,
yes,
you got the
which
idea.
Doesn't make any sense either.
But you got the idea. But I think that's the moment. I think the Venom, the multi, because that Venom, what I thought was, what I understood it as, he can breach across the universes of Venom. So one of those Venom does know that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. And the moment that you see in the post-credit scene of Let There Be Carnage is the moment where he's brought in to the universe. And then this was the moment where he gets sent back out. I thought it was kind of brilliant.
Okay.
Because I was like, wow, that's one way to bring Tom Hardy into this, to connect Venom without connecting it, because we don't want to do that. Now, let's be honest, though. We all wanted Topher Grace to be the bartender, but that's cool. I'm
going to give one exception to the word all.
I'm kidding. It's none.
Yeah.
It's none.
Venom was popular. People liked it, and so they wanted to have it connected. Okay, I get that, but it made no sense that he was there. And the most exciting thing from that scene is the fact that Danny Rojas was the bartender.
Yes,
because football is live.
Christo's the new Venom. If he's the new Venom, done. That's awesome.
Okay, I guess I'm with you with the Venom one. And I think that the interesting thing for me with when I talk about the fallout of this movie and how it's going to affect the MCU overall, for me, a lot of it too was belied in that. Was revealed to me in that trailer, where the Doctor Strange trailer. They talk about it basically, since you already know it's Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. It seems interesting to me that you basically allowed the situation for Doctor Strange, the character, to experience everything that happened in this Spider-Man movie, and think, hey, let's open this back up again, right? Because the conceit at the end of this movie is they've closed it. The multiverses cannot breach each other anymore. We're done now. All the multiverses can live on their own happy way. And it seems to be from that trailer, it's like, no. We're going to go get Scarlet Witch and we're going to open it back up.
Oh, that's not what I got from that. So yeah, that's a different
wait,
read.
Hold on a second.
What was your read, Matthew?
I left the theater because I don't watch trailers. So if we're going to discuss that trailer, I will just sign off now.
Okay.
No, which is not to say don't do it. I mean, it's a good thing to do, but I don't want to see trailers. I don't want to hear about trailers. So.
Did you watch What If?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I say that What If is now important.
Yeah,
it's important. I'm just saying that What If is actually it's not a weird side thing anymore. No. It's actually important.
Yeah. So then
So those of you who skipped it, don't skip it.
Did you read before the post credits?
No, I watched the Venom one, which I agree was a real thud. I had been told that a friend who knows that I don't want to watch trailers told me that the end post-credit scene of Spider-Man was basically just a trailer for the Doctor Strange movie. So I left after the Venom.
Okay, so you didn't watch the post credits. All right. Okay. Yeah, at least that one.
We don't have to get into it.
Since we are beyond the post credits, gentlemen, why don't we just rate this? So we're on Letterboxd. True Story FM's family of film podcasts are all part of the Next Reels HQ page. Letterboxd is a great way to track movies you see, write your own reviews, and be a part of a larger community of film lovers like yourself. Sign up for your own account today, and if you upgrade to a pro or patron account, use the discount code NextReel at checkout and to save 20%. The discount also works for renewals. So, Matthew, I will start with you since you have now officially declared that you've seen less of these movies than the rest of us. What out of 5 stars? How would you rate this movie?
I think right now I'm going to give it 4 stars. I think it was probably in my top 10, easily my top 10, maybe my top 7 or 8 of MCU movies. I'm curious how it's going to survive a rewatch because I do think that all of those plot hole stuff that Rob, like you said, start to gnaw on your brain. I hope that I can watch it again in a year or two and still love it. I think it's possible that in a year or two, I'm just going to be noticing all the holes and not because the shock value is gone and I know he's going to catch her and all that stuff. So it's I think this movie may not age well, but right now I give it a 4 out of 5 stars. It was so much better than I thought it was going to be. It was so enjoyable. I just had a fantastic time. And I have like 5 different podcasts lined up to talk about this movie because all I want to do is talk about it.
Without a heart.
Yeah. What do you mean?
Oh, like so hard. Basically, you like the movie. So, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Your faves or whatever.
Okay. All right, Kyle. What is your Letterboxd rating?
I agree with Matthew. It's a 4 stars and a heart. And then for almost the exact same reasons is that I would say the theatrical experience, I would say 5 stars going out, but I have the same thing. As I sort of start to go, and then how much of it once you know all of the twists and surprises, will it still hold up? I don't know. So yeah, I'm sort of reserving that way. My Homecoming would be 5 stars and a heart, and this would be 4 stars and a heart. And then we'll see how it ages in my brain.
And he who needs no introduction.
In the could have used a little more Tatum. That's all I'm just going to say. But here's the deal. In the battle that happens in my mind between how a movie makes me think and how it makes me feel, at the end of the day, feel always wins. 5 stars, heart.
All right. Nice.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, no, that is fair. I believe I'm now what I thought would be an original rating is now not. I also do 4 stars and a heart. I thought it was a very enjoyable movie. I think I really do fall myself in line with you guys where it's a great enjoyable movie. And the less I think about it, the better. Which does that. And honestly, Matthew, until you brought up, I hadn't even thought about whether or not it would be massively different on rewatch. Because, but again, I guess I'll get to find out. Yeah, well, I'll find out soon because I actually went out by myself to watch it first, and so my whole family we're all going to go see it tomorrow. So then I will rewatch it tomorrow, and hopefully I get all of the same feels that I got the first time around. All right. Well, thank you all so much for joining tonight. And so, is there anything else you'd like to talk about that's going on before we sign off in your True Story life, Matthew?
Well, yeah. First of all, apparently, I think my brand can be the person who most drives Ocean crazy because I look at what Ocean will ask me a question. I go, cool, interesting question. I want to answer this other question though. So, Ocean, I thank you so much for your patience in running this and allowing me to kind of run off at the mouth. I love the way you organize these things. Thank you. In terms of my other people want to find me, I am on the Marvel Movie Minute. I have been attempting this season to step into the wonderful shoes of Mr. Rob and Mr. Kyle. Not sure how good a job I've done, but we've been having a lot of fun with Thor. We got a couple more week left to finish that out. So definitely check that out on Marvel Movie Minute. We're having so much fun there. And then, of course, you can also find my podcasts, Superhero Ethics, right now, where I'm doing coverage of The Witcher. Season 2 has just come out. I will be doing an ethics episode on Spider-Man. We'll be diving deep into that. And then on my Star Wars Universe podcast, in just 1 week, we will be diving into the Book of Boba Fett, which I'm super, super excited for. So check out all those podcasts.
Kyle, you want to share with us anything going on in your near future?
Sure. The Swashbuckling Holiday Swordtacular is on its way. It'll be here on Tuesday, so Tuesday the 21st. that will end our year, and so then we're working on season 4 right now. So we'll be back early in the fall. The first part of the year, I haven't exactly figured out when yet because production schedules. Curiosity Codex will be coming back. I've already got a bunch of episodes banked. I'm just waiting to put them in the slot and have them all coming out. So that is still happening. And then there might be some unannounced projects coming in the near future as well.
All right, everybody, don't forget to join our online community with fellow movie lovers. Please learn more. To learn more, visit thenextreel.com/discord. And again, if you're not already a member, please consider supporting the show. And to learn more about how to do that, please visit thenextreel.com/membership. And as always, please do the stuff that you're supposed to do with your podcast: rate, review, subscribe, and of course, listen. But perhaps most importantly, share. Please let any of those movie lovers in your life know about the show. The best way we have to get more people listening to the show is you. Thank you, everybody, for listening.